my ex and I, we do family dinner every Wednesday with our kid, and we do holidays together and, all of that. We probably spend, well, according to the women who he takes on dates, we spend far too much time together. So
that's funny. When Chris and I were going through a divorce, and Derek and I spent a lot of time together, because the way that I see them both, they both are like brothers to me. I mean, here's the reality is I've dated not long term, but like short little bursts of men who didn't like it. Mm-hmm. And I do not like men who are like that. Like I very quickly learned that's just not for me.
This is Relatable, Relationships Unfiltered. Hey, welcome to Relatable, Relationships Unfiltered. Today I'm chatting with Heidi Powell, a transformation expert and self-love coach, about something that's not very common, but that we have in common: staying friends with your ex. Take it from us, this can get a little tricky. Hello, Heidi.
Hi. Recording is live.
Recording is live. We are doing it. Thank you so much for coming to hang out with me. I reached out to you on Instagram. So a little backstory. I've followed your story in the sense of your breakups and you staying friends with your exes though. And that being so incredible and so not common. And I got divorced about 3 years ago, and he and I are best friends to this day. And people ask me about that all the time, and they look at me like I'm crazy all of the time. And so I'm like, I've got to get somebody on here with me who not only like gets it, but lives it. And so here you are.
Yeah. I mean, so first, were you guys best friends when you divorced? Because I have to say, with neither of my, because I've been married and divorced twice, we were not best friends when we divorced. And so I'm super curious to hear your story. Like what was divorce like, and who wanted it?
Yes. Which can definitely complicate things. So I asked for it. We were married for 18 years. We separated a couple times in there. We have a 15-year-old son.
Okay.
Yep. And so we were one and doneers. Like we were very intentional with that. And so we do have him, and he 50-50 and all of that. But so I had asked for it. And so to say, were we best friends when the divorce happened? We were best friends from day one. Like that has always been our strong suit, is that we are always best friends. And when I made the decision of this is not working for me romantically anymore, no, I would say he did not want to be my friend in that moment. Obviously there was a lot of rejection attached to that, but as the time progressed, I think he recognized the value in us staying friends. So for sure, we went through rough spots when the divorce first happened, but we've been pretty tight and committed to that, like throughout the process. What was it like on your end then? So you're saying doesn't sound like that's how it went.
How long ago did you say it was again? Sorry.
It's been about 3 years.
3 years. Okay. So since the divorce was final or since separation?
So since I moved out.
Okay. So you and I are about the same timeline for my last divorce. So Chris and I split. It was June or July or August 2019. Okay. So you probably somewhere around there.
Yeah.
However, he and I'll get to all the things. There's a lot to unpack in 45 minutes.
Let's unpack it.
He and I were, we actually did the divorce process without telling the world at all. I don't know if you know this, but we actually, we knew we were divorcing. We were going through the divorce for a full year. We didn't tell the public until May 2020. Now, if anyone were to ever go back on posts, we never were like, oh, I love him. So never. We were very strategic, very careful. But also that time, let me just say, like that time for he and I was necessary, because I remember going through a divorce the first time and all that gets carried back to the kids and how hard it is for the kids. So we purposely did this in a way that allowed us the space to process divorce and get through the really hard, bitter part that comes with any divorce, right? Like that hard thing. We lived in the same home. He was in the casita. I was in the house. So we had enough space, but like it really allowed us to process it without getting too many opinions, which can make the divorce process pretty yucky and hard to overcome.
For sure.
Whereas Derek and I, my first husband, so I have 2 kids with Derek, Maddox and Marley. They're 17 and 16. He and I were married for 5 years, very early on, like not too long after high school, I married him. And that was a very difficult, I asked for that divorce.
Okay.
And then Chris, I mean, I think he and I knew we weren't going to stay married for very long. Just whatever.
Which, from the public eye, I'm sure everyone is like so fascinated. I mean, you guys were, for people who know Extreme Makeover, things like that, like you guys were this perfect Barbie and Ken. So I'm sure that like the world hit you with all of that as well when you came out with it.
You know, I think so. It's interesting how we can judge something based on how it looks instead of how it is, right? And Chris and I both, we might look like we belong together physically. And the truth is, he and I co-parent Liz better than any 2 people that I know. Like he and I are so good at co-parenting, but also a lot of it is knowing what relationship you're meant to have with that person. Does that make sense? Like he and I, and he would agree. It wasn't like it wasn't like, oh, he broke my heart and we knew marriage was not for us. I don't know. I think he said he'll never get married again. I don't know that I'll ever get married again. I really don't.
Right.
But he's definitely more of a, he is here on this earth for a purpose, and the purpose is to change the world. And he's been like this since I met him. He has a mission, and his mission is that, but also his kids. Right. And so marriage, I don't think is ever going to be in the cards for him because it just doesn't make sense. And I am someone who, I love connection. I love relationship. And so it wasn't a good match in that way. But
who initiated that conversation between you and Chris?
Well, okay. So he's told this publicly, so I'll tell it. It's not, Chris actually never wanted to get married. And I have done, I mean, I'm a different person now than I was when I married him. Like I had a pretty stunted emotional and mental process growing up because of just the way that my dad was and our household was and religion. And so I have been on hyperspeed. Like I've evolved as a new person every 5 years, maybe even less. But I was a very timid, shy girl when Chris and I met, and I wanted his love so bad. I would have taken anyone's love. And I'm so lucky. I tell Chris this all the time. Like, I'm so lucky I found you, because I was a really insecure, didn't know who I was, kind of a human at that point. And I am lucky like that your love was the love that I worked for, and that together we built these amazing things because of it. And because of his example of dreaming and creating and not taking himself so seriously and being careless on camera, like I learned how to be the best version of me, you know? Yeah. So he did not want to get married. However, he has always known he wanted kids. And I was like, you're going to have to marry me if you want kids. I'm like, great, I'll get the guy to marry. Because I thought I could make him a hopeless romantic like me. Like maybe if I just show him. But it's just like he and I, it was kind of like putting a, what do they say? Putting a square peg in a round hole. No, I don't even know.
Yeah.
Square peg in a round hole is what it was for us to be married.
Right.
But alleviating. So he and I both knew. We did therapy for 3 years every week. We would even fly to a therapist in LA for it. Not trying to fix it, but we did it trying to figure out what the best path was. Because I was terrified of being twice divorced. I was terrified of my 2 kids with him going through what my 2 kids went through with my last divorce. Right. And so it was really like, hey, is it better for them to sit inside of something that is not good? Because you can have 2 really great people, because we both are great people. Yeah. And you can be in a situation that is not good and create toxicity. Like 2 wonderful hearted people can actually have a toxic home life.
Absolutely.
And the cameras don't always catch it, right? Like,
right. And it sounds like a big part of it was that your needs, your emotional needs probably weren't being met because of the differences in your guys's, the way you show up in that way. And it sounds like he was really focused on his goals, changing the world, and you really crave connection. And I talk about that all the time when our emotional needs, when our deepest needs, right, aren't being met, we show up as the worst versions of ourselves, no matter how great of people we are. And so it sounds like that was kind of, you knew it was, I've put on Instagram before, like the wrong environment will always make us feel like there's something wrong with us. And it sounds like that's kind of what was going on.
Interestingly, halfway through his and my marriage, we just started growing separate. We both were growing. And I actually think I became my best version of myself in that. It was also the hardest part. Yeah. Which is what made it easier when he had decided. It was like, okay, I kind of knew, and I've been prepping myself for it, right? Yeah. I remember him saying, and he said it on a podcast, he hated who he was inside of a marriage. I did not hate who I was at all. Sure. I didn't like the situation, but and this happened in my first marriage too. I didn't love the relationship that my first husband and I had, but I can find happy anywhere. And I think that that's part of, I was an abused child. Mm-hmm. And so part of being an abused child is, even when things aren't good, only being able to see the good in it and like thinking that it's good. Right. And then when I step outside of it, I can be like, oh, okay. But my thing is, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. So even if something's not good for me, like the marriage was not good for me or Chris, because he hated who he was, it brought out hard parts of both of us. But like, right. I was always like, oh, but it's still awesome. Like, even though it's not what, like, we talk, all these people have, like, I still love it because we're best friends. Like, I just had this, like, we're great. And I really thought that it was, but now outside of it and having experienced love in a different way, with someone else, and also, and more importantly, when you said emotional needs not being met, I spent a lot of my life trying to get my emotional needs met. I have. And I just recently, over this past year, realized I am the only one who can meet my emotional needs. And I'm the only one who I want to meet my emotional needs. I believe that a man or a woman, whatever, regardless, can compliment me, or you or somebody else. We can compliment each other. But at the end of the day, there's like this epiphany that's like, oh, I'm the one. Like, I am the I am the partner. Like, look in the mirror. This is the partner that I need to be for myself, right? Yeah. And then everything else, you can have an interdependent relationship. But until we stop believing that somebody else is going to meet our emotional needs or fill our emotional needs, we will be forever living in codependence, which never leads to anything good.
Well, and that's exactly it. Looking for that person to complete us or to fill a void is always so detrimental. And that codependency does play such a role. I mean, the codependency plays a role in why I stayed for as long as I did, in spite of knowing. And the codependency plays a role even in you being able to find the silver lining in everything, because that is survival. So
you're scared. I was scared of, like, what if the other side's not better? Like, I'll just stay right here. Right.
What was that like for you when you transitioned out of your marriage with Chris and then you started dating somebody new? What is that? I mean, I guess even Chris being introduced to your first ex and then your current partner being introduced, like, how was that navigated, and how did that go is what I'm getting at.
I think if I were to go back in time, Derek and I, my first husband, we've had more of a journey, like a harder journey, and we're in a good place right now. But it's been consistency over time, understanding and fully expecting that it's not always going to be great with us. Right. And when it's not, I just need to keep showing up as who I am, and in every way positive, and it will come around. There were some more issues that I probably shouldn't go. I don't want to.
No, totally fine.
Yeah, I don't want to. but
air all that out.
Yeah. And there, I mean, I will say, like, even through that though, there's been so much growth on everyone's part beyond it. But it was he had a harder time with Chris. There was no affair, so it's not like that. Any kind of a thing like that. He had a harder time integrating into. I don't think he and I started getting along until I had a child with Chris, and then we started getting along because of some things he was going through that kind of allowed him to kind of let down his walls, and we created more of a friendship.
And then he and Chris became friends, right? Like friends, whatever that looks like. Like they were able to.
Chris was really good in the middle. Yeah, 100%. Like Chris is he wants everybody to get along always, right? And which is such a good thing, because I think a lot of people in that situation, like the new man, would be super possessive of the, Chris is like someone who's like, let's figure it out. So it really did work well, because I think if Chris would have been someone who was more of an alpha or more intimidating, Derek would have had a harder time. Chris would have had, and there was none of that, right? So Chris helped soften any part of Derek that might have had a harder time with anything, right? Now like from Chris to current, so Chris is great. Chris actually loves Dave. So Dave and I are actually not together.
Oh God. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Let me air out all of your trauma here, Heidi.
I mean, the thing is, it's going to come out at some point. It's just one of those things I don't necessarily feel like I owe it to everybody to say. I never confirmed when we got back together. He and I have broken up 4 different times, right? Okay. So it's like, but he and I are great friends. Yeah. Distance is hard, and we'll get into that, if we want to in a little bit. But he actually still works with me, so there's still a connection with Dave and I. But Chris has been the greatest with me dating somebody new. I will say that, like, the greatest. And I think if it was anybody other than Dave, Chris would not have been. But I mean, poor Dave, the world, I know that man in and out, the good, the bad, the ugly. I know everything.
Right.
The world has a perspective of him that is really inaccurate and really sad. And it's actually awesome to see his resilience through it. But Chris has been Chris has loved him from the moment he met him. And what Chris loves the most is that Dave treats his kids like kids really, really, really well. Yeah. And that's the number one thing for me. I mean, obviously you have to treat me well, but you have to love my kids. You have to at least act like you love them as fiercely as I do. If you don't, like, it's very important to me.
I completely get that.
And so, Chris has been good. But like, if you were to put some a-hole in my life, Chris would have a real problem with it, and he would not be quiet about it.
How much time do you spend? So my ex and I, we do family dinner every Wednesday with our kid, and we do holidays together, and all of that. We probably spend, well, according to the women who he takes on dates, we spend far too much time together. So
that's funny.
That poor man.
Yeah. So you're asking me how much time I spend with?
Well, yeah. So that's, yes. Like, we get so much feedback on people's opinions, and so a lot of people are like, that's really cool. Like, to say it's only for our kid would not be accurate. Like, Richard is just one of my favorite humans. Like, I just adore him. He is so supportive. He's so kind. He, when we talk about in terms of like attachment styles, and I can relate to what you're describing about your upbringing, abusive upbringing, a lot of spiritual abuse that went on. And so just a lot of chaos as an adult of trying to figure all of that out. And Richard has been what somebody has described before as like my lighthouse. And that is so true. But the romantic connection is not there for me in that way. And so we get caught up in that because we do spend so much time together because we enjoy each other. Yeah. But he's like currently trying to date. Good for him. He should, trying to move on and trying to date. And people just don't get that. And so, I guess, how much do you spend the same amount of time with Derek and with Chris, or what does that look like?
It depends on the phase, because Derek has worked for me a handful of different times, and me and Chris. And so we tend to spend more time together when we're working together. He doesn't right now. But that being said, I remember a point between when Chris and I were going through a divorce, and Derek and I spent a lot of time together, because the way that I see them both, they both are like brothers to me. Like there's absolutely, from either of us, not from Chris and Derek to me and me to them, there is zero sexual attraction, zero. And I also know if I like had to go on a vacation somewhere and they're like, you got to bring one person and blah, blah, blah. It can't be Dave, right? Because I would pick Dave because Dave's so much, without a doubt, I wouldn't pick a girlfriend. I'm the most comfortable with Derek, with Chris, and I just am, because we've lived so much life together. We have commonalities in that we have kids, and like no one cares about the funny, cute things that my kids do like their dads. You know what I'm saying? And I can have deep conversations with the both of them. So when Chris and I were going through a divorce, Derek was super supportive to me and to Chris independently. Like Chris and I didn't have an attorney. We just did a mediator that did the paperwork for us. And Derek was our mediator. Like I knew he had my best interest at heart. And I knew that he had Chris's best interest at heart. I knew that Derek had his kids and there's just a knowing that he loves my kids fiercely, including Chris's kids. So he and I spent a lot of time together, and absolutely not even a hand graze ever happened. Like I couldn't even imagine. Right. And he's the same way. It's like a hand graze with your sister. But the Instagram, there were so many comments from people, and we would laugh. And for a while it was hard for Derek, because Derek, he was like, I just don't like, what if people think that we're together? I think they think we're together. And I'm like, but we're not, and he, right. In fact, I think some people thought that part of why Chris and I separated was because Derek and I, there's rumors, which were not even close to true. But there then came a point where Derek was like, you know what, like the next person, if she's not okay with the relationship that I have with the mother of my kids, she's not my person, And Chris and I, we just spent an hour and a half talking last night about some of the, like you say, lighthouse type things, right? A lot of the trauma that is like coming up in my mind that I went through as a kid. And so Chris is someone I can have really deep conversations with, and there's zero threat with Dave. But again, that's for me. I don't care if a man is upset by my relationship with my exes. I really don't care. It's not my right person if it is. And I think both of the guys feel the same way now.
Do women though because I say the same thing, and that's why I always say to Richard, I'm like, I don't even let the conversation, like I'm probably like people are they look at me and I'm like, by the way, I'm best friends with my ex. Like I'm like, you can't, like you are gonna know it the second that you're like in my sphere. But for him, obviously, like he gets a lot more pushback than I do. Also, I'm not trying to be in a relationship, so that's why it doesn't bother me in the same way. But do you find that women are more intimidated? Like, so for Chris and Derek, the women that they do date, do they get pushback about you? Like, even if Chris and Derek don't care, do they still hear it?
To be honest, Derek's really only dated one person seriously since he and I, and she and I were good friends. And so we didn't have an issue with that. Like we were really good friends. We still are to this day. But I met her through Derek. Chris, I don't think he would ever date the kind of girl that would ever have jealousy over that. I really don't. Like, I think their pickers are like, they would probably pick somebody like me who would, and also I don't think Chris cares to waste time dating right now. I blame him. Right there with him. Have the best situation. And this is me looking for the silver lining, but I really do, because I have two guys who are so devoted to their life and their kids right now. They're not, I haven't had to deal with any of that in 15 years. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Not one bit.
Yeah.
But like, I do think of the kind of person that would be jealous, and neither of those guys would be attracted to that kind of a person, you know?
I think where it gets sticky is that, like, I don't think you have to be a jealous person to not love that your ex spends a bunch of time with their ex. Like, just looking at it from a very like high level logical. Obviously, you and I have very different perspectives because we do it. And the way you're describing Chris and Derek being siblings, that's how I describe to people all the time. That's literally how Richard and I are. Richard and I are each other's family. Like, we got married so young. We moved hours and hours away from our parents, who neither of us were close to or felt safe with anyway. So that was fine. But it was just the two. I mean, children, like, we talk about it. So our son being 15, and we're like, could you imagine in 2.5 years him getting married and doing what we did? Like, it was insane. But because of that, we had to grow up with each other, and we had to really rely on each other in a different way. So we are for sure family. But I do think about it from the perspective of people who don't get that and just not getting that.
I mean, here's the reality is I've dated not long term, but like short little bursts of men who didn't like it. Mm-hmm. And I do not like men who are like that. Like, I very quickly learned that's just not for me. Which day, I mean, I could literally go on a vacation with either of them, and Dave would be like, go for it, because he just knows, right? Like, he trusts me and all that kind of a thing. Now, I do think this too, that I'll add, is anytime my exes have dated somebody more seriously, I am very aware of how the other woman might feel. And I 100%, I'm very like, I think now that I think about it, we might both kind of tone it back, because I don't ever want that woman to think that I'm trying to, and I have a handful of really great best friends. I really do. And so giving them the space and the just respect to like do what they need to do and build that. And so, because I know for me, when I'm dating a man, it's funny because I like with them, there's not, when I'm dating a man though, I want that man to have eyes for me. I expect it. I 100% expect that man. Like, and if he doesn't, or if there's like, I want to know if I'm going to spend that much time and give that much, I'm going to find the man who wants me as their best friend. Right. And so I think of how I would want it if it were reverse. And then I kind of honor that for them. And so we've never had any issues. Usually we start connecting more after they break up. We're like, oh, hey, we're back, but we see each other and all that stuff. Yeah.
Have you dated somebody? So like, I guess flipping it on the reverse side, have you dated somebody who is as close to their ex as you are to yours?
No. No. So Dave is really the only person that I've dated seriously. And no, I haven't had to worry about that.
See, and so I think about that.
I don't worry about that at all. But that's what I'm saying. If Dave was super close and spending a lot of time with his ex, I don't know that that's a relationship I care to be in, because I only have so much energy. But that's a good thing, is it's not like I'm jealous, I'd be worried. It's I only have so much bandwidth in my life outside of my 4 kids and the business that I do. And so I want to know that in my spare time, the person that I'm with is somebody who I'm not like, oh man, you're over at your ex-wife's again, and now I gotta wait. You know what I'm saying? I want to know that like he's for me, right?
Right. And I did date somebody who they didn't like each other, but they spent time with each other similarly to the way Richard and I do. And I could understand it because I was doing the same thing. And so like, I could get that, but I was also aware that I didn't love it. Like, just being completely honest, like, I didn't love that I was giving up time, to your point, that we could have been spending together, because, he is with them. And so that definitely, but I think there's also, so like, as you're saying, trying to be respectful about it, that's something that I try to be really aware of, like, on both sides. So as the ex, like you're saying, not trying to be like overly intrusive, but then also having the awareness. So if I am dating somebody and that they have that relationship with their ex, that I am trying to be, understanding of
100%
the importance of it.
Like I am all for a good relation, but I guess the best way to put it is with Chris and I, while we talked for an hour and a half last night, we don't just go out as friends ever, ever, ever. Like we never have. Same with me and Derek. While he and I can have a really deep, meaningful conversation about really anything, he and I have never just hung out as friends. I think we have once, and it was in the middle of and it was really awkward to be like, let's be friends and let's hang out. But so he and I think we have a really good relationship, but I wouldn't say that it's like I'm going to go hang out when I have a boyfriend, right? It's not that I don't think that's bad. But not bad either way. It's just, I don't have that. And I think too, even if I wasn't dating somebody, I would have different male friends. Now I have male friends that I am still friends with, even when I have relationships, right? So that to me is different. Like, I have guys that I would hang out with as a friend that are not Derek or Chris, if that makes sense.
Right.
But part of, I think, why there's a relationship, but maybe not I'm just going to come hang out with you kind of a friendship. I think it allows us it puts us in a place where we're not going to fight over much, which is really great. So we can keep a really good, there's boundaries, right? So we can keep a really great relationship around the kids and all the things with we're not in each other's space all the time, which can kind of annoy people. So we're not as close as you and your ex, but we're really great, if that makes sense.
Well, for sure. And me and my ex are navigating recently if we should be as close as we are. So I'm definitely not like promoting it in the way, like it is the way to be. I do believe that there's a gray area. It sounds like you guys have found that gray area. Yeah. And that's Richard and I have been talking a lot about that lately. I want him to be happy. I want him to be in a relationship, and I can't pass judgment on these women who are not comfortable with him having the relationship that he does with me. And you mentioned, working with some of your exes, and he and I work together on a lot of stuff. And so there does become a lot of overlap. So I can respect that. And I can see that we've had a lot of conversations recently around, what does this look like? Do we need to pull back so that you can move on? Because I feel so selfish of like, yes, he is my best friend. Yes, he is my safe person. But if he is all those things to me, I need to love him enough to let him be happy and let him find what he needs.
Yeah, you just hit on something. And there's like what you're talking about. Everyone has, like, we're all entitled to make a list of what the ideal relationship would look like for us, right? So what my ideal relationship would look like with a man that I'm involved with on like a romantic level is different than, say, what yours, whatever. For me, the best friendship connection is the most important thing for me. Like that's like the number one thing. And if I feel like I can trust someone as a best friend and I want to confide all the things to them and I want to laugh with them and I want to do that, that's a person I want to be with forever, because the romantic flame dies down. Like after as many marriages as I've been in, I'll tell you, and I've dated a lot too, it goes away. It always goes away. But the thing that I crave and I love the most is the person that I can be wholly myself, like every bit of who I am, like lay it all out there. The ugly, I can wear my laser cap at night. I can say all the things that I am. And to have them see me and love me for all of it and laugh and think it's cute and funny. And that is Dave, which is why it's hard for us not to be in a relationship, because he loves every single part of who I am, but distance makes it difficult. Where my exes weren't like that. And if that is you and your ex, in my mind, I'm like, man.
No, don't say it, Heidi. Don't say it. You are not allowed to join that club. If we, oh my God, had $1 for every time we heard that. We have this really close friend group who we've been friends with like for years, and we always laugh. So there's 4 of us in it, and Richard and I still hang out with them like in that way. Yeah. And they always laugh about that when we told them we were getting divorced.
Yeah.
They were like, you guys literally get along the best out of all of us. You guys like each other the best out of all of us. Like, what is going on? And people just, they just don't, unless you live it, you just don't get it. And so I'm going to tell Richard not to listen to this episode because he's going to be like,
the thing is, I've never divorced a person that like, we were like, okay, there's something that doesn't work here. Right. So, except for Dave, but we're not divorced. Right. But like we are constantly on and off, but it's beyond the friendship thing. But there's a part of me that's like, man, this is why I keep going on and off with the guy, because that friendship is so valuable to me. Like,
how does the distance, how do you see that show up? So I guess, especially when you're talking earlier that connection is so important to you, is that where it comes in, or how does the distance impact you guys?
So I like, if Dave and I don't end up getting back together, I never say never. I don't know what would, number one, we both need time on our own right now.
Sure.
But the distance, like if say Dave wasn't here, right? Like, I don't know, say he moved to a foreign country and whatever. And he wasn't an option in the future, I would not be opposed to long distance with somebody else in the future. I actually really like it.
Okay.
Now with there's a different situation with he and I, so I'll explain that. But I like, I'm somebody who never liked to be alone before. Like there's a Pink song, and in it, one of the lyrics is, "The quiet scares me because it screams the truth." And that was me for so many years. And something about these last few years, 2.5 years is how long Dave and I have been dating, or we're dating. The quiet has been beautiful. But I also think I'm growing, and I realized all the things about the void is for me to fill. And what are the things I wish I had in a partner? All right, make a list of them. And Heidi, you better freaking fill these things yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And so that aha moment, and actually being comfortable with myself, being comfortable with my thoughts, and actually loving who I am for the first time, that has made distance actually a thing that I like with a man. I like being able to coordinate schedules to where we can be with your kids for a little bit. Like I have my kids for a week, but we could overlap to where we had just enough time with each of our kids. I had half the time with my kids, but then we'd have time alone, and then we'd have time alone with just like no kids and us. And it was so like, I love that. I love that could happen, because I feel like those are all relationships that you have to nurture. You have to nurture your relationship with yourself first. And it's hard with someone living in state. My relationship with my kids is the next most important. So I need time without him and my kids. Then it's important for he and I to have time without kids to nurture that. And then it's important for him to be with my kids just enough and me with his just enough. So that I actually really liked. But distance became hard because I had an aha moment with some anxiety attacks that I was having, that I believe was, I think I knew it was over with me and Dave, and it was hard for me to accept it, codependence, right? Yep. And it threw me into anxiety, and I had these things that were like, what is the most important thing to me in my, like, what do I want my life to look like in 10 years? All right. What do I want it to look like in 20 and 30 and 40 and 50? All right, Heidi, stop focusing so much on building your business and doing these things, and let's build the life that you want. Stop focusing on traveling back and forth to Texas. Do you see a future with Dave? Mm-hmm. And that was my biggest, and Dave and I have had very open conversation about it over the past few months. His youngest is 5. My youngest is 9. And so the reality set in. I knew, like, when I think of my life in 10 years, all my kids are going to be out of my house, all 4 of them. Mm-hmm. And I want to feel like I have worked toward building a life with somebody, right? And it's really difficult to build a life with Dave and he with me when we are both independently so rooted, and our kids are both the most important thing to both of us, right? Mm-hmm. He's very rooted in Dripping Springs, and has to be. And I love that he is. And I'm very rooted in Arizona. And it does, even in weeks where we don't have our kids, I'm still home a lot because my kids have a lot of sports. He's still there. And so it is harder to build a life with somebody who also has 4 kids and is rooted across the country. that's really what it boils down to with he and I.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that makes a lot of sense because you have to, I agree that you do need to know the things you want to need in a relationship, and you have to be able to meet a lot of those things for yourself. But a big thing that I work on with my clients is for them to identify also those things in a partner. So their wants, their needs, and their boundaries, and that they write it out. They're very clear on what that looks like. And so as you're describing, if that want or need is to grow roots with somebody, or is to be able to plan your future long term, and you see all the barriers in the way to do that, I mean, that's a lot of self-respect that you are willing to take what is so good and decide to sacrifice that because long term, that's not what's best for you. It's a really hard decision, but it's a really powerful one.
Yeah, and I do think, though, it also, like, I'm aware enough to know that Dave and I met very soon after he and Rachel split. Like, I mean, there was a podcast. He invited me to do a podcast with him on his, then Rachel had kind of said that you can have that podcast, whatever, the one that they had together. I had never listened to it. So but I was passing through Texas. So I ended up meeting, it was a few months after he and Rachel had split is when we met. Okay. And we didn't start dating right away. But a friendship grew and turned into a relationship. And I think, there are also some underlying elements for the both of us, like a year outside of a marriage for me. When I was a year outside of the marriage with Chris, it still is not a lot of time, especially considering I was married for 5 years before. A year after that marriage, I met Chris. A year and a half later, he and I were married and having a baby. Like there's not been a lot of time for me to grow. And there's definitely was not, Dave was in that marriage for, I don't even know how many years, maybe 20. I could be wrong, 16. But I think they were together for 20 years. There was no time to process any of it. Right. Mm-hmm. And there are, like, when I make a list of what I want in a partner, I don't know that I'll find the right partner the next person I meet or the one after the one. I think it takes time, right? Because every relationship we have, we get to see what works and what doesn't. And we get to say, oh, okay, I got this that time from this guy. And then I got that over. And these are things like, this is something I don't want. This is what I do want. So you get to create what you want. Yeah. But I also don't know that I believe there's the one, right? Like, I think It's really awesome that I have gotten to have the experiences that I have with the people that I have. I think that's a part of, I think what it's really doing is making you the one is what it is, because you're getting to see. But yeah, it is. Oh, go ahead.
I think that view of there is the one, I think is so detrimental for so many people, because I think that it keeps people either stuck in toxic relationships because they're so convinced, but this is my person, because, all these check mark reasons of why. And so they'll stay in spite of it not being healthy. Yeah. Or on the flip side, it prevents the more avoidant people from getting in relationships because they're so picky. So it's like, nope, that can't be it. That can't be it. And so
when it's all fun, they just need to do it.
I really think it holds people back. Yeah. Do you enjoy dating?
The idea of dating right now feels awful. Like, now before, I would say outside of both of my other marriages, I was like, oh, I'm ready right away. Right. Because there was a part of me, I think, that craved attention of men more than I do now. I just don't care anymore. Like, sure. I don't know what happened to me, but I don't need it anymore. I think, again, there were so many emotional voids that I was filling, and I didn't even know. I had no idea. So I was excited to date after both of my last marriages. Now I am not, there's not a part of me that I'm like, man, like I have a lot more responsibility now. I have a business I'm building. My kids are at an age where I'm like, they're so close to leaving the house, 2 of them. And it makes me really sad. A relationship with Dave, which was great. It took a lot of energy. And I'm really looking forward to having the energy for myself and for my kids and my business right now. Sure. And I feel like I'm like, oh, okay, there's no one man that's going to save and fix everything like you thought, or no one perfect guy. The next thing is going to be another couple years of figuring it out. And then do I start over again? So it's like, I'm not in a rush this time.
Yeah.
I think I'm not excited about it, and I'm not in a rush. But there will come a point when I am. I feel like I have stuff to do on my own right now,
Right. Right. It's such a sign of healing that you aren't the things that you were using to fill the void prior. That's not what you're looking for. That's not what you're searching out right now. It sounds like you're finding a lot of contentment in you and in your goals and your passions. And I mean, it's a.
How about you? Are you dating? Have you been dating? Tell me.
This is where our producer Melissa gets happy. I am supposed to be dating. Supposed to be, in the sense, we had a dating coach on a few episodes ago.
That is amazing.
I was like, I didn't realize this was going to turn into me working with dating coach, but I'm on apps. Not that I use them. It's such a joke. Like, I don't, and then obviously Instagram, there's plenty of DMs that go on. So like the opportunities are all there, but I'm probably falling the category of like the one. And so I don't believe in the one, but like the idea of being super picky, right? So just being really selective. Like it takes a lot to pique my interest. And because I am so career driven and I'm so obsessed with my kid, to your point, like in order to pull me away from either one of those things, like it has to be worth it. And it hasn't been found as of yet. So
I think that's really good. You and I are a little bit different I love that you're so picky, right? I am because of my upbringing and because of some of the things that I went through, I can love anybody. I'm not kidding you. I can actually find the good in and love anybody, and I can really love them, right? Whether it's toxic, abusive, anything. My work, I also don't like to hurt feelings. So I think my work next time is in having a conversation over an app and having the courage to not feel like I have to go to coffee with them if I don't like them, right?
Yeah. Practicing boundaries.
And then when we go to coffee with the right person, having the courage to like not go on a date with them, because I am somebody who likes to make people happy. I feel like I need to like show them respect and then, after a week or a month, having the courage to break up with somebody, because I am a person that's always had a hard time saying no.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to be a bad girl, a mean girl. Right.
Yeah. You end up in a lot of situations that obviously not wanting to be in. And to your point, like really, really convincing yourself that you want to be there and that you do, you're finding all the reasons to stay. And that's, that takes control of the mind in a lot of ways. So sounds like we are definitely on the opposite ends of the spectrum. So maybe we should become dating buddies and we can like really encourage healthier behaviors.
You can be like, no.
And you could be like, give him a try, Liz.
I mean, like, look at his heart. He's a good person. Like, he really loves you.
Yes. All right. Well, we have some partnering to do for sure. So Heidi, tell us a little bit just about the work that you do. And then I know you have a really cool program coming out in January, and tell us a little bit about that.
Oh yeah. So I actually, because I can love anybody, it's a real thing. I also have like we all have gifts. One of mine is being able to see in people what they can't see in themselves. I know what people are capable of. I think you know what they're capable. We all know what they're capable of, but it doesn't matter if they can't see it in themselves. So I'm a trainer, but I always say I serve people what they think they want. And then when they come in, I give them what they really need. They want diet and exercise. So that's how I bring them in. But what we serve them is the tools to actually love who they are and be comfortable with who they are and figure out why they thought they wanted to lose the weight in the first place, or all the things. And then we heal from the inside out. And we do the physical work, but that's a byproduct. The weight loss or the shape change is a byproduct of them actually learning the real tools to transformation and self-love. So I have challenges that I run. I have an app, again, because some people think that they want workouts. I'll give you the workouts because that's where I'm trained. But
sure.
I have this really cool 5-day, it's called the 5-day Better Body Boot Camp. We give workouts every day. But what we give more than anything is every single day. I say, give me 5 days for 5 minutes a day. These are people who have tried and failed and tried and failed and tried and failed. We've all been there, right? Mm-hmm. And when we try and fail over and over and over, we end up hating ourselves. We hate ourselves. We don't believe we can do anything. We're like beliefless. And so my thing is, give me 5 days. Give me 5 minutes a day for 5 days. Let me teach you a nutrition tip and a 5-minute workout, super easy. And then I'm going to give you a life lesson that will help, a perspective shift that will help you look at everything differently and help the diet and exercise that you choose, help it stick. Because otherwise everything's temporary. And this 5-day Better Body Boot Camp, we have one starting January 2nd. It's completely free. And it is the most magical thing. I poured my heart and soul into it. And it helps people see that they are worthy and they are capable. And it helps them begin to believe in themselves again. And then the sky's the limit. I'm not kidding. Some of the transformations that we've had that started with that boot camp are insane.
That's so cool. It's really the snowball effect, right? Like you get the buy-in on those the base level of like, I can do hard things and then I can do harder things. And then it really grows from there. It's a really great approach. Where can people find the program? Where can they find more about you in general? Social media, website?
Yeah, I think the best place to go for everything, my Instagram, Real Heidi Powell, is where I post all of those things. But if you go to HeidiPowell.net / oh boy, I'm going to have you go to HeidiPowell.net / get fit.
Okay.
That will be that. Enter your email. And as soon as the boot camp, you can register for it. You can't register right now, but as soon as you can, I'll shoot you an email or just check me out on my Instagram. It'll be there.
Cool. And yeah, we'll make sure to include the links and everything so people can definitely check you out.
Thank you.
Heidi, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Like, it is such an honor to be able to talk through somebody, again, like just who gets it and who can honor the importance of that relationship with your child's other parent. Like it's been such a good conversation. And I feel so connected and validated through this conversation. So I appreciate that.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Liz. It was awesome. I loved hearing your story too. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we'll definitely plan something for our dating partnership moving forward.
Yes. Let's do it.
All right. Thanks.
Okay. Bye.
Had so much fun chatting with Heidi, having a super relatable conversation. Thank you all for hanging out with me today on Relatable Relationships Unfiltered. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and find me on Instagram at Dr. Elizabeth Fedrick.